Alright, in this video we're going to be looking at how to get a little more accurate in our length for a half-wave antenna. Let's continue to deal with 40-meter band, and we had calculated in the conversion video that in feet was 131.23 feet. And we could divide that in half or a quarter or whatever we wanted to get an approximate length for half wave. Well, right out of the Amateur Radio Handbook, we can get the length in feet by using the magic cookie number 468 divided by the frequency assumed to be in megahertz. Well, what do I mean by magic cookie? Radio frequencies travel through space differently than they do through a wire, and at a slightly different speed. And that has a tendency to shorten or lengthen the distance. Another factor that can be involved is in wire antennas, and using insulators at the end of the antenna creates an end effect, which also tends to shorten the length. So all that is pretty much accounted for in this conversion factor number, I'll call it. That's why I call it magic cookie. It's beyond the scope of this video to derive this, and a little return on investment for doing that. So this is just straight out of the Amateur Radio Handbook. Okay, so let's say we want to cut an antenna. We want a half-wave antenna for the 40-meter band, and the frequency for the 40-meter band is 7.0 to 7.3 megahertz. We want the halfway point to be kind of center band, the antenna to be resident at the halfway point. That way we're good on either side. So that's going to be 7.150. Okay. So let's put that in our calculator. Let's take 468 and divide it by 7.150. We don't need a zero. And we see then that what we need in terms of feet is approximately 65.45 feet. But we don't want to go out and cut one at that length either. And the reason being is that you really should do your antenna trimming at the location where you are, because there's all sorts of other factors that come into play when you put an antenna in place, how far it is from the ground, and effects from metal buildings, and there's all kinds of things that can enter into it. So put your antenna up first before you start trimming it, if at all possible. And you want to cut longer than what it tells you. Okay, we know that we're going to be 65 feet and some number of inches. Well, this brings another conversion. Calculators deal in tenths. Okay, so 123.4, this is a tenth. Well, when we're talking about feet, we're talking about feet and inches, and we have 12 inches, to 1 foot. So the foot is divided into 12 pieces, not 10 pieces, so we got problems. How much in inches is 65.45 feet? And we're particularly looking at the fractional part here. And you can sort of guesstimate by saying, okay, if this were 0.5, we know that 65.5, that's half a foot, so that would be 65 feet 6 inches. So this has got to be close to 6 inches, but something less than that. Well, is there a way that I can get that value? Well, let's use a conversion factor of 12 over 10. This is tenths, this is twelfths. And I put it this way because we are more likely to be converting tenths, some answer we got on the calculator that is in tenths, and we want to convert it to something that's in inches. So we need the tenths part, like any other conversion factor, we need the tenths part to be converted to twelfths. So that's kind of like doing this. All right, but we don't need to convert the whole foot. We just need the decimal part. And here's how I do it on the calculator. I take the 0.45 and multiply it, and I'm going to put this in a fraction form. I'll multiply it by the 12 divided by 10, and press enter. It gives me a decimal value, but you can move that over one if you want. This 0.54 that's on there, this is 5 inches, 5.4 inches, so almost 5.5 inches. So 65 feet and a little over 5 inches. And you want to cut it long anyway, so you probably wouldn't start with anything less than like 66 feet. And then be very careful when you are trimming the antenna, and do that in place because as I mentioned, it's height above ground, whatever, all has to do with that. So when you're trimming this, use an antenna analyzer, and be careful, because when you start getting close, a quarter of an inch can be the difference between the antenna being resonant and being scrap. So you want to be real careful, and always start out longer. It's always easy to trim stuff off. It's pretty hard to add stuff on. Okay, that'll give you a good head start. The takeaway from this is this formula right here. This came straight out of the ARRL handbook for figuring out half-wave antennas, and this is good for frequencies that are less than or equal to 30 megahertz. So it covers pretty much the whole HF range, and should work okay for you. The final proof, of course, is to put the antenna in place and very carefully start trimming it, and using an antenna analyzer to see if you're getting close to resonance. All right, I hope that gives you a leg up on doing this. This is what you need to remember in figuring out how many feet you need to cut your antenna to. Have fun!